This week, the fashion world said a goodbye to a true legend, Giorgio Armani, a designer whose name has become synonymous with elegance itself. We will take a moment to reflect on his remarkable legacy, but fashion never stands still. The British Fashion Council has revealed its key nominations for December's Fashion Awards, and some very big names are on this list. Meanwhile, in the business of fashion, Lululemon has had to cut its forecast, while Sweaty Betty has quietly slipped back into profit. And there's a big shift happening in India that could see a shake-up in global fashion brands from Zara all the way to Louis Vuitton. And Burberry is back. It has recently rejoined the FTSE 100. I'm Asa Anderson, and this is This Week in Fashion. Let's begin with Giorgio Armani, who has passed away peacefully among his family this week. To call him just a designer feels a bit too small. Armani wasn't just the face of post-war Italy's fashion renaissance, the man who dressed Richard Gere in America's Gigolo, who has softened the suit, who has made power dressing chic and not fussy. What has made Armani different was his precisionness, his elegance, and his refusal to sell out. Unlike Dior, Chanel or Versace, he never gave up ownership of his empire. He leaves behind not just the collections of Armani Privière to Armani Exchange, but hotels, cafes, residences, and even yachts named after his mother. And yet, despite his enormous success, he remained remarkably grounded. He once served guests pasta with olives and garlic on his yacht, all by himself. Imagine, Leonardo DiCaprio and Beyonce are paying tribute to the man who still insists on folding his own napkins. Armani wasn't just a fashion emperor, but he was also a gentleman. This genius has left us, and fashion will never see another quite like him. From one giant of fashion to the names that are shaping our future, the British Fashion Council has just revealed the nominations for this year's Fashion Awards, happening in London this December. From Designer of the Year, its most powerful lineups are Glenn Martin, Jonathan Anderson, Martin Rose, and Rick Owens. On the women's wear side, expect creative directors of Erdem, Givenchy, and Simone Rocher leading the pack. Menswear's seeing a big names too, with Craig Green and Grace Wallace-Boner in the spotlight. And the Vanguard's Awards, that's where you'll find the rising stars and fresh waves of designers who everyone will be talking about next year. These awards aren't just about trophies, they are proof that London is still one of the most creative stages in the global fashion industry. But as ever, the business side of fashion tells a different story. Lululemon has slashed its annual sales and profit forecast, cites a softer demand with inflation and yes, tariffs. Shares have dropped 13% after it's announced, and the brand's now expecting up to $240 million in margin hits. If we compare this with British activewear label Sweaty Betty, which quietly returned to profit for the first time since 2021, despite turnover falling, slightly tighter costs and control, better margins pushed it back into the black. With just under £1 million in profit, this may be small significance, but it reminds us that even mid-sized brands can still play their footing while global giants are stumbling. Meanwhile, India, one of the fashion's fastest growing markets, has announced a tax shake-up. Garments under $29 will now be taxed at 5%, but anything over that will jump to 18%. That's putting pressure on premium brands like Zara, Levi's, Nike, and even luxury names like Dior, Louis Vuitton. Because while $29 may sound modest in Europe or in the US, in India it's a critical price point for the middle class shopper. The Clothing Manufacturing Association has already warned this could be the death of parts of the fashion industry. It's a fascinating contrast where luxury brands like Mercedes-Benz are actually getting tax cuts while fashion is taking a hit. And with India being such an important growth market for global brands, this is one story that we'll keep our eyes close on. Back in the UK, Burberry has clawed its way back into the FTSE 100 after 1 year of absence. New CEO Joshua Armani has referred the house back to its British roots and its iconic outerwear, and shares have been rallied over 70% under this leadership. Rejoining the index not only boosts Burberry's prestige, but also widens its investors base, since funds that are tracking the FTSE 100 will now need to hold Burberry stock. It's a much needed win for the brand as it fights to stay competitive in a slow luxury market. And finally, let's talk about the reinnovation of H&M's group and other stories. It has unveiled a brand new look under the creative director of Jonathan Saunders. Out goes the handwritten logo and in comes a bold new type font. The fall 2025 collection leans into the 60s, 70s and 90s. Think mohair jacquard, slouchy tailoring and sharp cuts. Accessories bring a nostalgia edge from chunky jewellery to bowling-inspired bags. Saunders says this new direction is all about individuals and feeling real clothing for everyday experiences. In other words, dressing with personality is not just trends chasing. So a week that reminds us that fashion contrasts, the passing of Emperor Armani and a new voice voying the fashion spotlight at the Fashion Awards, and brands big and small facing tough markets. That's all for this edition of This Week in Fashion. I'm Asa Ranson, and if you found this update useful, do give us a like, a subscribe for more weekly insights, and let me know in the comments below which of these stories best stood out for you. See you next week.